Hi, welcome back for another 8 Caillou challenge called Dollars and Cents. The company you work for has just been awarded a contract to build a payment gateway. In order to help move things along, you have volunteered to create a function that will take a float and return the amount formatting in dollars and cents. So they give us this example of a floating point integer, specifically a double. You'll notice over here they're expecting us to take the 39.99 and format it as a currency value, American dollars in this case. The rest of your team will make sure that the argument is sanitized before being passed to your function, although you will need to account for adding trailing zeros if they are missing. So it's nice that they pointed that out for us. You might get just the number 3, in which case you need to make sure it's formatted out to 2 decimal places. And the same if you get just like a 3.1 where there's just a tenths place value. That should go to 310. In real life, I would think the sanitizing team shouldn't be in charge of that, but that's good. We're learning here, so we will handle that. You know what to do at this point in the video. I think this is pretty clear what needs to be done. Go ahead and pause the video, have a go at this, come on back, and let's go through a solution together. So I'll get rid of the comment. In fact, we're going to go through a few solutions together. I'll give you a couple real quick ones, but they're nothing I would expect you to know at the 8 Caillou level. This is the very beginner course, so I'm not trying to confuse you or shame you if you didn't come up with these. If you did happen to come up with something like what I'm about to show you next, you should be very proud of yourself, and you probably have a bright future ahead of you. Not that it's overly complicated, but it's just, I'm not used to absolute beginners going through the documentation pages and coming up with this kind of thing. So one way you could approach this very simply, okay, we know that we can convert between different types in C#. In this case, we're going to take the double, and I'm going to convert it to a decimal, which is recommended for currency values. This will work to double. I'll show you that afterward. But basically, just imagine it's changing types. It's converting from a double to a decimal type, which maybe you haven't even seen before, for this amount value. So we pass the amount. Okay, so you can imagine at this point, the type has changed. And then basically we're going to project it into a string, which is what is expected for the return value. And then we could sort of tell this toString method can take parameters. Maybe you've never passed it parameters before. The most common way is probably not to give it any parameters, and it just gives you a string. But you can actually kind of specify how you want the format to be. And there's a whole language about that again you may have gotten into if you went into the docs, but something like this would probably suffice. Okay, so convert does not exist. You can probably figure out why we didn't make that class, right? So let's go ahead and bring that in. System. Remember, if you weren't sure, you would just Google something like C# convert class, and you could find the namespace that it resides in. Okay, so we passed the, well, it looks like just one test. It doesn't mean much. And we'll hit it again. So, yeah, I mean, you can see this is clear to submit. It's a one-liner. This is probably what I'll submit at the end of this video. And again, you didn't have to go to double. You could probably just, or I'm sorry, you didn't have to convert to decimal. And you might even be able to just do it like this if you had wanted to. So yeah, in fact, I'll probably submit it like this. Remember though, in the case of Code Wars, like whatever tests they're running for the full suite, we're relying on them to be, complete, and that they're not missing edge cases that actually would show maybe this way to be not as good as converting to a decimal first. So I don't want you to think because you complete a challenge at Code Wars that necessarily it was the perfect solution for all input. It all comes down to the quality of the tests you write. That's a big component of test-driven development. But anyway, that's a different topic. So that's one way. Lots of different ways, and we'll see this when we submit, but I mean, you could also do, like I said, there's all sorts of, look up the toString method. You can see all the different ways you can pass formatting things, like this C, you can see is these standard format specifiers. C is for currency, so it kind of handles getting that $sign in there for you and the commas in place when necessary. You could see how they added, instead of just C, it was C3 to take 3 decimal places. Probably the default is 2 though, you know, for English US, that's us, and here in America. You can even see the French version, right? They use a comma for the decimal point like they do in Europe, same in Germany. But yeah, I think that's enough said here. Like I said, you can go all the way down the rabbit hole you want with that. So I'll leave the C here, which should take it to 2 decimal places. Then I'll make one of these culture info objects to specify that we are looking for English United States. There's a second parameter, false, that has to do with using your system's settings for currency. I just set that to false. We'll see where this comes up a little bit short and fix it. Let's go ahead and test. But again, it's just kind of another way of doing what we did before. And we don't, of course, we don't have culture info. Let me see if I have that doc page for you. The culture info class, you can see, resides in system globalization. You maybe have never seen this before. And again, I don't want to talk too much about this in an 8 Caillou challenge, but I'm just showing you some neat ways to be intimidated by that. So we'll add using system globalization. Let's see if that clears things up for us. Okay, so not quite right. Look, it expected 5,943.15, and we did that, but look, we got these commas in here like we use with monetary values. And I think that's unfortunate that the challenge didn't want the proper way of writing these numbers like we do with money. But for whatever reason, they decide, hey, we don't want commas in our output. Okay. So all you can do is at the end, strings have a replace function. Again, go to the doc page and look up the string class and its replace method. And when it takes 2 arguments, the character you want to replace in the string, and then what you want to change it to. So we're saying, hey, take commas and switch them with an empty string. Remember, we don't want a space because it will leave a gap between the 5 and the 9 in this case. So I'll hit attempt again. And so you could submit here as well. You get another one-liner. Now, in fact, I'll save this solution. That's, or my last one, I'll fire off. But again, normally I give you these extra ones at the end of the video. I offered them up front right here. Hopefully I didn't scare any beginners away by doing that. Let's go through like you're an actual beginner and just using the tools, the basic tools, and sort of rolling our own and how you can do this if you didn't know about culture info or string formatting, or we're just kind of couldn't figure out the documentation on that, how to make it work. So let's just try something more basic. Let's say string, I'll call it amount text, and I just want to convert the amount provided into a string form here. That's all I'm trying to do. And at the same time, what I'm going to do is round it, right? Because we could have input like 53.9271654. We just want 2 decimal places for all of our output, right? These are currencies. We're not dealing with fractions of a cent. So I'm going to use the math round class, which you've probably seen if you've been with me for any amount of time. But it does exactly what you think it would. If you aren't familiar, there's a class made for us called math. It offers this one method called round, which rounds numbers. And then you pass it the number that you want rounded, and then you tell it how many decimal places you want it rounded to. Very straightforward. This won't blow up because I already have using system here, and so that's going to contain this math class. Anyways, finally, after it's rounded, I'm going to take it into a string form here. Now I'm sort of, let's look at this as our input has, let's say, 2 or 3 different cases, right? It could have came in, if you remember from the instructions, as just the number 3 with no decimal point. It could come in as with the decimal point, but missing a number, right? Like we want 3.10 here. Or finally, the third case would be it comes in as we expected, an integer amount, a dot, and then exactly two digits afterward, specifying the cents. So I'll make a couple cases to handle here. One where it has a decimal point and one where it doesn't. I'll say if amount text contains, again, go to your string class. It has a method contains, if you haven't seen this before. And you get to pass it a string. In fact, I think I had the doc page open. Yeah, you could pass it as a character. I did it as a string here. The character, I could use character in my case because I only have one character, but you could also search for a string within a string, right? So I'm going to do that. Feel free to change it to single quotes if you want it to be a char. And I'll say this is one case, else, meaning there is no decimal point. So I could say if it did contain a point. What I can do then is I can use the string split function, again, you can find in that class, and it can split up a string into a bunch of multiple strings where you pass it a delimiter or some character on by which to split it up. You may want to, a common way to do this is to split by white space. If you wanted the words in a sentence, you could take a typed out sentence, split it by a space, and it would give you just the words and not the space characters. But here, we're going to do it by the decimal point, so I get a dollar amount and a cents amount. Hopefully that makes sense. We'll say string array. That's what split returns, is a string array. I'll call it dollars and cents. I'm expecting exactly two values there, right? Everything to the left of the point and everything to the right of the point. I'll say that equals amount text split, again, see the string class, and split on the decimal point. Good. So now remember, if I had this 3.1, I still have a problem at this point. It would, in dollars and cents, it would give me 3 in the first string and a 1 in the second string. I expect this to be the string array here to have exactly 2 entries because remember the team sanitized excuse me, sanitized our amount input. But in the real world, you know, you'd have to watch out for that. I'm going to trust them here and it will work out for this challenge. So anyways, let's additionally cover the case where if dollars and cents at index 1, meaning the second string in there, the one that represents the cents, if its length is equal to 1, we have a problem, right? So then in that case, we'll just say, hey, dollars and cents, just add a 0 to the end of it. So we went from 3.1 to 3.10. That will cover us in that case. If we had our 2 decimal places already, it will just skip right over this logic. And then finally here, we can return a string. Remember the dollar sign preceding the string indicates we're going to do string interpolation, which means I can use curly braces to insert values that I don't want taken literally. So I want to start my answer with a dollar sign because this is money. Then I'm going to put in, within the curly braces, notice how I can put in variable names in here, dollars and cents 0. And so instead of typing out literally dollars and cents bracket 0 close bracket, it will inject the variable's value in there, and that's incredibly convenient. Then I'll put the decimal place, and as you can imagine, I'll set up another set of curly braces here, and I'll say dollars and cents at 1. And I think that will cover us for the case where we have a decimal point. And then finally, you can imagine if there is no decimal place, this is our only other case, so I won't even use an else clause. I can simply say to return, because notice my if clause here ends with a return statement. There's no avoiding that if you get into this if clause. That's why I can just simply say otherwise return what I'm about to type here. Again, I'll set it up the same way. A dollar sign, we're going to put the amount text. You know, this would represent a case like just the number 3 came in. So I'll say go ahead and take that just 3 and then add the decimal place and 2 zeros to it. I think something like this should cover us too. Let's check it out. What did I do? Dollars and cents does not exist in the current format. What did I do? Dollars and cents. What line was it on? Line 17. So go to line 17. Oh, I put dollar and cents. Absolutely, spelling matters. Those are two completely different things, so that's fair. You were probably yelling at me while watching this. Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, and then you could fire this off. Again, not terrible, right? But even if you had, done the work to come up with these built-in solutions, so to speak, I encourage you at the Akayu level to make sure that you can roll your own as well. That's a good practice to do, and then you come to appreciate some of the built-in stuff. But we want to make sure that we can do these things on our own too. So that said, I'm going to get rid of the sort of long-winded response I made. I'll probably go back to that first answer, the first one-liner I had to submit. I imagine we're going to see a lot of things like it in the answers. I encourage you to look at those to see what you can learn from other people as well. And this is another case of that. I'll put in the previous, remember the very first answer that I showed you. Let's see if I typed it right. Yep, I'm going to get rid of the system globalization because I don't think we needed that. That was with the culture info thing that we did earlier. Okay, yeah, so I'll go ahead and fire mine off. Nice one-liner. And yeah, so hopefully some of these you look at and you're like, hey, I haven't seen anything like that. And yeah, here you go. Number format. I like this, sort of along the culture info. They grab the number format where you can actually change the currency group separator. So by default, that would be a comma in our English United States. And you can see they sort of overwrote that to be the empty string. So that's how they handled removing the commas from the answer. That's great. So yeah, feel free to go through these and see what you can learn from other people as well. As usual, I really appreciate the likes and subs. You guys keep me going. You know where to find me if you have any questions. Otherwise, we will keep rolling. I will see you in another challenge. Thank you.